My mom turns around and says, "Girls, I have a bad feeling about this. Make sure you have your seatbelts on." And I said, "Hold on, Mom. I dropped a CD," and I unclicked my seatbelt and I go to reach for that CD. And that's when our car starts to hydroplane and spins out of control and rolls off into a ravine. I was told about that, that I was paralyzed. And of course, at first I'm like, "Oh, doctors, you don't know anything. I'm going to walk again." And which, I did definitely try. I tried real hard. I'm an athlete, and I definitely tried so many different things and worked my ass off to try to walk again. And the spinal cord is just a very delicate and interesting part of our body. Focus, where I just had to keep focusing on what I wanted to focus on, what I could do, instead of focusing on like the bigger world and, like every single possibility. I just had to focus on what my possibilities were.
Well, Ashely, thank you so much for joining me today. It's only been a few weeks since your agent reached out and told me about your amazing story, and I've been very much looking forward to forget the audience for a second. They don't like it when I forget them, but forget the audience for a second. I've been looking forward to hearing about this for my own sort of benefit. So, can you? Because I want to get through as much of your story as we possibly can, basically. So rather than me ask a bunch of questions, can you just talk us through the origin, talk us through where it all started for you?
Okay, yeah. So the big life transition, the big accident happened 2 weeks before my 14th birthday. It was summertime. My family was driving from California. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. We were driving from California to Colorado to go to a family reunion. And we stopped for lunch, typical, just a fast food place. And it was hot, summertime, wearing shorts, whatnot. And about 20 minutes after lunch, all of a sudden it got real dark, like real dark and cold. Just the sky turned absolutely black, and lightning started to strike 20 feet away from our car, I remember, and just sheets of water was coming down. And I do recall looking at the windshield and all the rain and just thinking how bizarre this all was. Like where was I? Here I was on this family vacation, summertime. I'm in my jean shorts, and where am I? I'm in the desert. Why is it raining like this? I didn't know anything about monsoon rainstorms. And that's what we were in. And all of a sudden my mom turns around. It was my mother, my father, and I was in the back with my little sister. My older sister wasn't in the car because she was 18 and working and, too cool to go on a family trip. And my mom turns around and says, "Girls, I have a bad feeling about this. Make sure you have your seatbelts on." And I said, "Hold on, Mom. I dropped a CD," and I unclicked my seatbelt and I go to reach for that CD. And that's when our car starts to hydroplane and spins out of control and rolls off into a ravine. I was thrown out of the back of the car. I was found 150 feet away from the vehicle. My dad was killed instantly on impact. His neck snapped immediately. I was told later from police investigators, I don't know if they were just trying to make me feel better or whatnot, but my gut says that there was some truth to this, that I was actually on the same side as my dad. And everybody told me that, if I was on that same side of my dad, and if I actually did have my seatbelt on, there's a good chance that maybe I wouldn't have survived the accident, just like my father. Mm-hmm. And so ironically, not wearing the seatbelt could have saved me. But so I was thrown out of the vehicle, and my mom and little sister both remember the car, rolling into the ravine. My mom passed out fairly quickly after that, and my little sister remained awake for a little bit longer. She tried to wake my dad up, and he just slumped over. And she heard me screaming off in the distance, swearing my head off. And so she was trying to get to me and find me. And so she was trying to crawl through broken glass She broke her ankle and her elbow did a full rotation. My mom's legs were completely crushed underneath the dash. Like she had to have multiple surgeries. And even today, she can't really walk well at all. Basically just walking on metal, which is very painful. And and then I was airlifted. So the accident spot exactly was a kind of a really gnarly spot. The ravine was real tight against the road, and the way the road curved, you really had to be stretching your neck, out and down and looking down like for a vehicle. So I'm not sure exactly how long we were there, but somebody did eventually find us that day. And his name was John, Angel John. And he came to the vehicle and he assessed the situation, saw that my dad was no longer there, and was helping my mom and my little sister, and said that he heard and felt, he heard a man's voice, and he literally felt like he was being pushed in the direction of where I was. And so he just kind of went with his gut and was just kind of walking around and, looking around for something. And there I was, completely blue, not breathing, in bushes, all hidden. So he turned me over on my side and got all the fluids out of me and kind of got me breathing a little bit, called the ambulance, and I was airlifted to the Latter-day of Saints Hospital in Utah, which I was there in ICU for a month before going back to California to do my first set of rehab. But that first 10 days or so, I was completely out of it on morphine. I actually died twice. I died twice that night that the accident happened. My little sister even has the fond memories of her older sister being, stripped down naked and them trying to get the paddles out and trying to revive me and bring me back to life. She got to see that. And then later on that night at the hospital, I died again. And they told my mom, that it just wasn't going to look good and I wasn't going to make it, that kind of a thing. But obviously I did. And I woke up and I knew something really bad had happened. The mind works in really mysterious ways. I knew that my dad was no longer there. I knew, but I couldn't really explain it. I didn't have the words. I couldn't say like, oh yes, there was an accident and he, broke his neck. I just knew that like he just wasn't there anymore. And I knew something was wrong with my legs. I just didn't know the word paralyzed. Paralyzed just wasn't in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And so I was told about that, that I was paralyzed. And of course, at first I'm like, oh, doctors, you don't know anything. I'm going to walk again. And which, I did definitely try. I tried real hard. I'm an athlete and I definitely tried so many different things and worked my ass off to try to walk again. And the spinal cord is just a very delicate and interesting part of our body where, yes, like in some cases, like working really hard, the same level that I did, you would be able to walk again. But just my injury was so severe. My spine was basically almost completely severed. And that's the injury that I came about. And so then I started the process of coming back to life, literally having to learn how to sit up in bed again, which took such a long time, learning how to just balance myself, learning how to transfer, learning how to put my pants back on again, taking a shower, absolutely everything was new all over again. So it was like being an infant with an adult mind all over again, which was interesting and challenging for sure. And then, of course, being at rehab, my first rehab situation, I was in a facility where everybody was recovering from strokes and heart attacks and all these things. And here I was, this 14-year-old, well, now 15, because like I said, the accident happened 2 weeks before my 15th birthday. And, I just felt like, this is just not right. Like what? Nobody my age was around me, not even close by like 30 years, was around me. And here I was in this rehab center, watching these people learn how to walk again. And I was just trying to learn how to sit up and get into my wheelchair so I could just move around and like start to learn how to function again, let alone, go back to high school and, open up doors and try to date and, balance academics and whatnot, because, previous to the accident, I was on my way to get a scholarship to Stanford. I'd been working so hard to get this scholarship. My parents were not in a good financial situation, so I knew that I would either have to if I wanted to go to college, I would have to get a scholarship or do financial aid or, incur some kind of huge student debt loan.
Yeah.
And so I was really trying to do a basketball scholarship because I definitely had skills young and really wanted to develop those, just had the mindset of, okay, yeah, like I have this talent, like let's use this and do something with it. And so literally, from second or third grade, I worked really hard at basketball. And then I learned about Stanford, and at Stanford, you can't just get in through sports. You actually have to get in with your grades too. Your grades have to be just as good to get into Stanford as your basketball skills. So I'm dyslexic. I have anxiety, and then during the accident, my head was split open. So definitely suffered some mental glitches from that as well. But I continued to work super, super hard because I didn't know what the future was going to hold for me. So after that basketball scholarship was taken away because I was now paralyzed, and obviously that dream was dead, completely dead. I just decided to keep going. Okay, I'm just going to keep focusing on my grades then and just focus on that and see if I can get a scholarship some other way. And I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to the University of Southern California, which was very challenging.
I can barely even imagine. Before we move on from there, I think I want to ask a question around loss, if that's okay, because you lost in 3 different ways at the same time. Obviously, your mum lost the use of her leg, or the main use of it, the full use of her legs during the accident. Yeah. But obviously,
let me just jump in. Yeah, my mom was also, for the first year, my mom was in a wheelchair herself as well, and we lived in a 2-story house. So the dining room was actually converted into a bedroom for me. The town that I lived in were so very nice. They came in with construction while we were still in the hospital and turned the dining room into a little bedroom for me, and turned the laundry room into a shower that I could use and whatnot. But it was still very, very real because I was still living in that 2-story house, and I would go past the staircase every single day. And at the top of the staircase, that was my room. My 2 other sisters was, further down, but you could always see it even makes me tear up right now, like my old room, my old life, like up those stairs. And I was now just sleeping in the dining room. So had to just
it's okay. Now I was just thinking in terms of, the thing is, from anyone from the outside, like hearing your story, it's, even though we know not to do this, we all kind of compare tragedies, and we all compare losses and stuff. And obviously, in this situation, you've lost your father in the accident, but also you've lost the life that as you just said, your old life, your old room. You've lost all of this. How was it kind of compartmentalizing all of that and kind of, grieving both for a lost parent and grieving for like the life that you lost yourself? Was it something where people were encouraging you to consider yourself lucky because you're still alive, or anything like that? Was there any kind of that type of pressure, or were you allowed to kind of experience all of those emotions in your own way?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, everybody had their 2 cents all the time to tell me. Something that I heard all the time that I hated: this too shall pass. Don't worry, this too shall pass. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, I know that, but right now, like, this sucks. So like, what can I do right now to like make this better? Like, I know, 10 years from now, it will be like a million times better. But right now, this just sucks. I would say that the physicalness of that loss definitely took center stage. It was so time consuming and mentally and physically draining that I did have to, compartmentalize the loss of my father a little bit, where I would just, take time, like take a moment, go outside in the backyard and just, sit and stare and just kind of think about him, maybe do some writing or whatnot, and just kind of set that time aside. Because otherwise, it would just be like, okay, I'm thirsty and this is going to take me like a while to get some water and figure this out. How am I going to get a cup, or just wheeling back in the house, or like I dropped something. Like everything just took so much time at first. I remember there was a gal who came to visit me who was in a wheelchair. And my big question was, as a 14 or 15-year-old girl, was, going to the bathroom. And, if you go to the bathroom, like with your girlfriends at the movies or the mall or whatnot, it's like girls are very sensitive and aware of what kind of bathroom you're doing. And so, and like the timing of everything, like if you're like longer than like 2 minutes, it's like, oh my goodness, she's doing a big stink right now. And it's like this big social girl like thing. And so I was really nervous about that. I didn't want everybody to think anytime I went to the bathroom that I was in there taking a big poop. And so I had this gal who came to my house, and I'm like, okay, how long does it take you, to go like into the bathroom, and, to get your pants back on and off? That was the hardest part, is getting the pants, especially back on. And so I timed her, and it was 2 minutes, And so I'm like, okay, that's super reasonable. But I was definitely at that point, like way longer, So as an athlete, I kind of set that as the standard. I'm like, okay, that's like, the 6 minute mile. She just showed me what the 6 minute mile is like. I'm kind of at like the 15 or like 20 minute mile. I'm like walking the track. Maybe I'm not even on the track right now, but eventually like I will get there. But I wanted to see kind of what that was like. Cause being a girl in girl world, there's certain, mean girl rules that whether or not you want to follow them or not, they do exist.
Yeah. I mean, there's guy versions of it as well, and it's like they do exist, even though we've seen them a million times in TV shows and films, and we're like, what, why have people not figured out that it's not okay to be like this? But when you are that age, it's like,
everything is scrutinized to like a T. Like, my girlfriend sometimes would, check the labels on my clothing and whatnot, like, oh, that's cute. And like one girlfriend in particular was notorious of doing this.
So that's cute. Looks at the label. No, it's not.
It's like, oh, this is cute. What is it? It's like, oh, okay, well, it can't be that cute if it's not, like a certain brand or something like that, and she's like a super fashionista. Like even today, like every time I see her, like she just has like the most perfect outfit on for whatever it is, getting coffee, getting groceries, whatever. It's just like perfect. I love her to death. Like she is like, she's wonderful, like we all have our flaws and whatnot. And that did affect me, like a little bit when I was growing up, but obviously I got over it.
Yeah. So from that point of kind of getting accepted into a University of Southern California and getting the scholarship and all of that stuff, what was the next leg on the journey?
The next leg on the journey was definitely college, because I still wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of my town, this town that knew just absolutely everything about me. Not only that town, like I needed to get out of Northern California, because I felt even going to Stanford or Berkeley, which were definitely realistic and viable options still for me. I just didn't want to be in Northern California anymore. I had to go further away. And so I was looking at other schools, and because I needed to test my boundaries. I had to be away from my family and away from these people and friends who just knew this life that I knew before. I wanted to be accepted for just who I was in this place and time now. And so like I said, I ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Southern California. And I had to go there because it's basically like an Ivy League school and didn't get a scholarship anywhere else. And so it was a no-brainer. It was kind of hard my freshman year because I'm sure your listeners aren't completely aware, but they can probably definitely understand. So USC is in Southern California, and a lot of celebrities and just crazy rich people send their kids to this school. So it is like, I grew up in a very affluent town where some kids even got like Mercedes, they got brand new cars and whatnot, a brand new Bug or whatnot. But I went to USC and these kids got like a new Jaguar for their first car. So I grew up with like, okay, if I had like a silver spoon, like these people had like a platinum spoon. And so like I had no idea like where I was at, like what's going on, like how am I going to relate to these people? But it being such an amazing school, and actually they give out so many different scholarships. They have a great international program. So even though like the first like 6 months was difficult, and I definitely was even considering transferring schools because I just thought, oh my gosh, these people are just, I just couldn't relate to any of them. Like nobody had gone through any kind of tragedy even remotely close to me or being grounded in that way. So I was thinking about transferring, but I found my people, I found my friends and was able to, find my place and find really good people that I'm still good friends with today. And, people who accepted me like for who I was and weren't like afraid of the wheelchair, and weren't, and didn't use the wheelchair also for their own attention, because when I was in high school, there was definitely a couple friends who definitely loved the attention that I got. Everybody like knew what happened to me. So there was always kind of this fluster. Oh, Ashely, do you need anything? Oh, Ashely. And like people would just come and like talk to me, and teachers. And there were a couple of friends who just loved that attention. And so they would just hang around me. And then they would just chime in and be able to talk to the people who would come and talk to me, because I didn't really want to talk all that much, but they love to, fluff their wings and,
I think it's one of those things with any disability. You've got people at kind of both extreme ends of the spectrum. You've got people that are like, I don't want anything to do with that disability, and then you've got and I'm going to put my cheesiest fake American accents on for this. The oh my God, aren't you so brave? Those type of people that are like that ultimately want to turn you into inspiration porn, basically. I imagine or like even like friends who
just want to like push me around, like, oh, look at me, like I'm so good and I'm helping her out and whatnot. And I mean, fuck, they even nominated me as I got sophomore princess, which was just horrible. I did not want to do that at all. There was nothing about that moment that I wanted a part of. But I did it for the community. I did it for like everybody else. None of that night was for me. I just literally felt like this little like puppet for the public. And I knew and the thing is like, I knew that it came from a good place. And that was the thing. It's like, I knew that it came from a good place, why they nominated me, all that kind of stuff. But still like, I'm just like, this is not the attention or the pedestal that I was looking for. Because even at that time too, I had this big brace that I had to wear. The first 6 or 8 months, it was basically like this turtle shell, like this tortoise shell of a brace that I had to wear around myself on the outside of my clothing to keep my spine straight, just so like the fuse would solidify. And so it just I just looked ridiculous. And of course, like from the accident and having the breathing tube in, I had all of this tape all over my face to hold the breathing tube in. And so I had all this acne scarring. So like my face was just like, my cheeks were just bright red. Like fresh out of the hospital, like kind of look with this ugly brace on. I'm like, oh, yay. Hi, Princess Ashely here. I feel so beautiful and wonderful. But yeah, it's again, like I 100% get why they did it. And it was a very sweet, sweet gesture for those who were sincere about why they voted and not just being like, oh yeah, she went through some shit, so yeah, let's vote for her.
Yeah, it's a very kind of, I don't even know what the word is. It's a double-edged sword especially now we're going to sort of talk in a second about you moving into the space of being a travel writer and what you do now. And it's an interesting one because it's like you don't want that attention, but then when it's like whenever we do any sort of project like what you're doing now, or like anything that I do, it's like people me actually having my own mental health difficulties is kind of like the price of entry for people to take me seriously and to listen to what I actually have to say about anything. It's and it's one of those things is like I don't want the attention because of this, but I want attention for this, for I want to raise mental health on attention around mental health. So how did you kind of make that transition from that position? I'm trying to put a jacket on like without making too much disturbance, and the more I try to do it subtly, the harder it's got. How did you kind of transition from into that space of how did you get started in the space of actually of the accessible travel and what you do now?
So I have this little poem book that I'm busting out. This was like a poem book that I started in like 7th grade. It's been long, like filled up, but there was a couple poems that I had bookmarked that I wanted to share just because I feel like it talked about my mindset of where I was at and kind of where how I dealt with these things. So I have two that I want to read. One is called Through Hopeful Eyes. Through new eyes, I see the world, a world that I have never seen before. With wheels, I turn to walk. My legs are still and move no more. My life is changed. The world I once knew is gone. Through new eyes, I venture into strange, exotic lands towards dawn. My legs express pain with no feeling, yet my heart cries watching them. The touch of a hand I no longer grasp. They are lifeless, and I pray they mend. My dreams have changed, yet my hopes grow stronger. Each day my heart fights so that I will stand prouder. Through different eyes, I watch the world. I see nightmares of the brave. I feel my eyes have opened for the first time. It's only yourself who you can save. My legs are frozen and time is moving, along with my heart that gets brighter. With each day, my soul expands, for every day my hopes get lighter. Through hopeful eyes, I can only see the truth I now face and the challenge I must take. Each day, I must learn the obstacles I must overcome. With my new eyes, I see a new world that I will make. And so that was that was in September. So that was only like 3 months or so after the accident. And then a year after the accident, I was doing more intense rehab at this children's hospital where I was learning how to go up and down curbs and like getting in my wheelchair off the ground and stuff like that. And even doing some walking too with braces, which was extremely difficult. I basically, in order to even them to make the braces, I had to be sitting flat on the ground with my legs in front of me and having two just normal dinner-sized chairs next to me on each side. And I had to have a hand on each side of the dinner chairs where the seats are. And I had to be able to lift myself up off the ground 50 times before they would even make those braces, because walking with braces is just literally lifting up my fat ass like every single time. So, braces for me was just not a very functional way of getting around. I was just like, yeah, no, forget this. But it was good to learn during the rehab. But anyway, so I was there a year after the accident, and literally like to the day, a year after the accident. And after I did physical therapy, I took a moment and I kind of snuck away to a floor I wasn't supposed to go to, where patients weren't supposed to go to, because I knew there was a balcony there. But I explained to one of the administrative staff, like what the day was. It was, like day of my accident, like just don't mess with me. Let me go on the balcony and like have a moment by myself. And she totally understood. And so I'm sitting on this balcony, and I have, paper and pen in my hand, just wanting just to write or just feel or do something. Like something had to get out of me. And this is what I wrote. It's called I Can Fly. On a ledge, I sit and gaze out into a world black and white, watching people scurry away, never knowing what's wrong or right. As I see the black and white figures change from off-white to pale gray, I notice that I find myself the exact same shade. 15 years I have sat there in newsprint, the same as everyone else, caught up on what others thought and not necessarily on my mental health. But today I spread my wings high into the air, letting go of all my fears, trying new things on a new path that on my own will steer. I will face rocks and barriers that are unimaginable to the black and white world. Yet in the end, I will be a better person and finally leave behind the little girl. On the ledge, I stretch tall and can hear the chaos echoing below. So terrified as I close my eyes and in a quick instant let go. I cautiously open my eyes and see a world that I have never seen. Only through my new eyes is this no longer a dream. I am no longer scared. Faster and faster, the wind obeys my moves and helps me to glide. Flips and turns, new adventures, holding my head up, never to hide. I stare at my fingertips and in amazement watch as they turn a royal blue. Through my new eyes, I now see a colored world that I was given the courage to see by you. To my father, thank you.
Why'd you have to go and do me like that? First of all, a 15-year-old has no business being that good at poetry. That was...
So it's like, it was a poem about being like, just accepting this new life that I had, that I was for so long, I was just kind of like everybody else, in this black and white world, just doing these processes and, going to school and being what I'm supposed to do, what the teachers tell me, doing what my parents told me, and not really like looking at the bigger picture, not seeing really anything else. And I feel like this really has allowed me to like step back and see something much bigger and grander than, my existence or my life, itself.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Powerful. Very, very powerful. And both poems absolutely amazing. I really thank you so much for sharing those with us. And there's as I said, I don't look in on the chat too often, but there's a lot of love for that in the chat as well. And so thank you for sharing that. So it was kind of as soon as that you realized, you are there to take a different path, basically.
Yeah, definitely. But I do have, I actually have another poem that I wanted to read that was in October when I was kind of just going back to school. Because it's very real about kind of like how I had to cope with the transition a little bit, even having to be fake a little bit, but I was very aware of my fakeness. Which I feel like was really important, that like it wasn't something that that I was oblivious to, that this was like some role I was playing. I'm like, okay, I'm going into the situation like I need to like almost like protect myself, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Because it was just too much with all the questions and concerns all the time with everybody, even with myself. I had to sometimes even go numb a little bit. So this one is called The Storm. Among the pieces of broken dreams, I wonder what went wrong. I search for someone to blame and wonder why I must be strong. I had my life planned out. I knew exactly what I wanted to be when a storm came and changed me. I'm trying to get over it and make it on my own, to put my life back together, to cry when I'm not alone. Sometimes days roll by without a gray cloud in the sky. All my friends think I'm fine and continue on with their lives. There's a part of me that's aching, a large part of me that's breaking, wishing that I could change into someone else, be anyone in the world but myself. Loved ones surround me with warm embraces, but all I can see is their beautiful faces. My reflection is not what I want to see. Disappointment fills up inside of me. How can I be in love if I don't love myself? Am I missing something else? There's a part of me that hurts, a feeling that slowly lurks, an invincible feeling that won't go away. The ugliness stays. I am suffocated by my own emotions, wanting the pain to end in a quick motion. Crippling my spirit and self-esteem, things are not always what they seem. Because behind the wall of stone are the feelings that won't be shown. It's a battle between who I am and who I want to be, not certain which one will win me. My life has changed, but I want it to stay the same. I struggle with the impossible to relieve my past, so I continue to wear an iron mask.
Amazing. So when did it come the point where essentially, as you said, then my life is, at that line, my life has changed, but I want it to be the same. What was the kind of turning point where it's okay? I hate this expression, especially considering how much it's been used the last 2 years, is when did you try and find your new normal? Like, when was it that, okay, it can't be the same. I've accepted that. But that also, I imagine I also don't accept it exactly where it is now. It's time to take that new path, like in the flying poem.
I mean, it definitely wasn't just like a night and day shift or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it really was just like a gradual focus where I just had to keep focusing on what I wanted to focus on, what I could do, instead of focusing on, like the bigger world and, like every single possibility. Like I just had to focus on what my possibilities were, and not be so overwhelmed with everybody else was doing, which was definitely difficult because as a teenager, going through college, you're setting dreams and goals and ambition, dating and whatnot. It's like just dating alone was a heart attack, just, oh my gosh, like the guy having to like break apart my wheelchair and like put it in the car and just like the horrible awkwardness of that, and just making me feel just, oh my gosh, is he like not going to like me because he has to do this? And, but yeah, you just have to, I just kept reminding myself, that, one day at a time, like, what can I do right now? Like, how am I going to make this work right now? I'm feeling upset. What can I do right now about this? Do I want to, kind of explore this and like write a poem and like, give this some space, and like, really kind of look at this, and like allow it to like have some time and breathing room? Or do I want to, just not ignore it, but just focus on something else, like there's no like 100% getting rid of, like these like thoughts and feelings, but it's controlling of what I want to focus on, what I want to put my energy and effort towards. Do I want to, think about how like I can't walk, or I can't go for a run? It's like, no, like I'm going to think about how like I can go for a stroll, and I can still like enjoy the fresh air, like, in the birds and like being out in nature, and like going for a hike my way, or just, doing something that I like to love, doing painting or what have you. Yeah. And like literally just focusing on the good of what is possible that I can do. After the accident, I went through like a series of counselors, like, I don't even know, like a bunch, like we'll say like a dozen, but probably not a dozen, but we'll just say a dozen. And I despised all of them. Like I despised all of them because they were all just very textbook, just giving me like these very fluffy nothingness or just not saying anything at all. Like I told them all of this shit that I had gone through and like what I was feeling. And then they would just listen. And I'm like, can you say anything to me just to, get me to think about this stuff a little differently or just anything? Like, please help me. Like, geez. And I finally found a guy. Like I was just about to give up. And somebody recommended me this guy. I'm like, okay, fine. Like I'll give one more person a shot. And he was a linebacker. So he was like this huge guy, like 6'7", just tree trunks for legs, just drove this huge truck, like huge bright red truck, lifted, just massive guy. And that alone just cracked me up because I'm like, who's this guy? Like this big tough guy who's like, sit down with me, like and counsel me and be all sensitive, like that to me just kind of tickled me, and I like that a little bit. But I definitely tested him on the first day. I'm like, okay, like what's your story, like what's your shit kind of thing. And and he told me, and he definitely went through some dark stuff. He definitely went all the way to the bottom and he came back up. So I'm like, okay, I will listen to you. You have something, I feel like you might have something to tell me. And out of all the things that we talked about, there's one story that has always stayed with me. And I feel like definitely had such a profound impact on my outlook and experience in life in general, where we did a counseling session out on the patio at the house. And both my parents, my dad was a park ranger. My mom was also really into plants. They had like a landscape business too. So like plants and nature education was very high in my family. Yeah. So we had a beautiful backyard, like landscaping was just like beautiful. And so we're sitting on the patio looking at all the beautiful plants and whatnot. And he was just like, oh, Ashely, like the garden just looks so beautiful, and it was that 4:00 hour where the golden sunlight is coming through and just making everything just extra beautiful, that beautiful natural tint. And, so we're just looking at all the beautiful flowers. He's like, yeah, gosh. And you see that, look at the fence in the very back there. He's like, oh, see those beautiful yellow roses that are growing? Oh gosh, they almost look like they're gold right now with the sunlight coming through. Gosh, they're just so beautiful. Let's just look at them. So we're looking at them. And then he's like, oh wait, what's this right next to us? Oh, wait, there's a bucket of dog shit literally right next to the front door because your little sister cleaned up the dog poop earlier this morning. And now the bucket is right next to us, right here by the front door. So here we are, we're trying to focus on these beautiful roses on this back fence, but our attention keeps getting drawn to this bucket of shit right next to us because it's really strong and the smell, it's right next to us. It's right here. But no matter what, Ashely, no matter how close that shit is, we have to keep focusing on those roses on that back fence. And I was like, oh shit, that's something. That's something. That is definitely something. Because right now, there's a lot of shit around me right now. Like there's a lot of chaos and shit and madness. And I just have to keep focusing on that back fence, that bigger picture, those golden roses.
Yeah. I mean, the question you keep coming back to there is actually anyone who's a long-term listener on a podcast will know that I call this like the golden question. It's like, what can I do right now to move forward with this? Because what can I do? Not what can anybody else do for me? And sometimes what can I do is ask somebody else for help, but rather than sit around and wait for someone. And the right now part of it is it's the moment that we're in, the one that we've got control over is the one that's right now. And it also allows for context. It's like, given everything that I've been through, what can I do? It's like, not what could I have done if things were different? What can I do given the current context? Yeah. It's like, it's a powerful question that you might answer that question differently at 11:05 as you would at 11:45 because the context has changed, but it teaches us to actually trust in ourselves and our own abilities to actually figure out the path that's in front of us.
Yeah.
So
there's the phrase that I hate when people would say, like, oh, this too shall pass. When I first became injured, I hated that. But then 10 years after that, when I had a surgery, I had an emergency surgery, this life or death threatening surgery where I had an infection seeping into my bloodstream, which after a certain point would cause instant death, is irreversible. It's what Christopher Reeve died from. I was in a hospital and reading all these books and whatnot, just trying to keep myself like mentally sound and trying to learn some more shit. And I was reading this book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And there's a phrase, a phrase that absolutely blew my mind. He took that phrase, he's like, okay, this too shall pass, but use it with everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I never really thought about that, and that just keeps you in the present moment, Yep. So it's like, even if, it's a beautiful sunset or you're having a great meal, you're just like, oh my gosh, like this too shall pass. So like, you're really going to appreciate, that warm cup of coffee, that seeing that friend or taking that walk or whatever it is. Cause it's not going to last, but I feel like that was like really refreshing where it's just like, okay, like it's going to be okay because, like this moment is right now and, in the next moment, it's going to be something else. But I felt like the secret is though, is your perspective on those moments. I feel like that, like the power is in your own perception on how you actually view that moment. Because like I said, I had an emergency surgery. I had 6 months of recovery, where I was literally, like in bed rest, like 99.9% of the time, 99.9% of the time I was in bed rest, except for like to go to the bathroom or whatever. But then there was even a period where I was in a nursing home. It was called a short-term care facility, but it's basically a nursing home, had a roommate and everything, where I had to lay flat on my back for 8 weeks. 8 weeks. I couldn't sit up to even take a pill, take a sip of water, go to the bathroom, nothing. Laying on my back, 8 weeks, solid 8 weeks in a nursing home, alarms going off, chaos, no sleep. You don't sleep in these places. And so controlling my perspective in such a horrible or like such a stereotypically horrible environment, changed me forever and ever and ever, because I definitely, I experienced things that I did previously, but it basically like solidified everything that I had experienced before. It just took it to like the absolute extremes where I knew, okay, yes, like focus on the small things, the positive things, just find one good thing. But there would literally be days where I'm like, okay, the only good thing for this day is the warm washcloth that I get in the morning time to wash my face off and then staring out the window. Those were my two things that I was grateful for. And that was literally like, there were days where I'm just like, there was nothing else like that I felt like I could be grateful for. But I was so focused on those things and I was so appreciative of those two things that I feel like it's the analogy I like to give is going into the dark forest, where I feel like with your emotions and whatnot, personally, I feel like it's okay to go into the dark forest. Sometimes I feel like not everybody, but some of us need to go into the dark forest of our own emotions. Yep. And kind of explore that and walk around in that and kind of feel that out. And that's totally okay, because you might find some things in there. But I feel like if you want to get out of the dark forest, all you have to do is just find one good thing. Focus on one good thing. So like that warm washcloth, the fact that I had a window, I literally just was so happy about those two things. And from that, just then like another little like burst of light would come through, like, oh my gosh, like don't forget about, like these letters that you get, like from people, or don't forget about, like how kind the nurses are. Like the nurses are so incredibly kind and they come and talk to you and like, share jokes with you when they're all stressed out from other patients and stuff like that. And all of those little tiny moments, like they just kept growing and growing and growing. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, like, this really isn't that bad. Like it's not that bad at all. And, like I'm here because this is where I am. I was never angry. Like, oh, like I want to be, like done with this. I want to be in like, a month from now. It's like, no. Like I'm here. I need to be here. I'm being looked after. Like my health is getting better. This is what I need. My health is getting better. Even though I'm in a hospital and there's some other things that are, stereotypically not so pleasant and great. It's like, you got to focus on what is the good in that moment. And it just grew. It just grew and grew and grew. And I literally turned, like I said, a stereotypical, very unpleasant moment into like a whole meditation retreat. And that's what my book is about. So,
have you got a blue screen? It's
called it's Confined to a Line on Amazon. And there's like lots of really good poems about nature and whatnot, and just about it's another level of acceptance. That poem that I read you about being on a ledge and jumping off and just accepting the fear, and just going with it, and just seeing, just try, just see like what it feels like, it might feel a little scary, and that's okay. But just keep going, like we're going to be okay. And this book is just like a bigger example of that, where you can like literally see kind of like the journey of like progression of, acceptance. And then, of course, coming out better at the end. Yeah. Controlling my perspective on things.
Amazing. I think with gratitude, right, I see it all too often. I've been guilty of doing it myself, is that when you first discover it, it's like, oh, this is great. It feels really good. And then eventually, instead of being something you feel, it becomes something you do. And people are like, oh yeah, I'm grateful for my 3 things at the end of the day. It becomes a box ticking exercise. And then the feeling gets removed from it. And I think you mentioned obviously like that you'd watch the coffee meditation video that we did like about a few months back. And that was one of those days that I just thought, you know what, I get to have a cup of coffee like every single day. I usually have a couple of cups of coffee, and I can, if we deeply focus on everything about that cup of coffee, like every person that was involved in the process of getting that cup, making sure that cupcake like got to you, and so on and so forth. It's
much love goes into that.
Exactly. Yes. It's like, it was in this cup, I believe, and it was like it can be a cup of coffee that's a non sequitur of your entire day. It just doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't feel anything. Or you can take that moment to actually thoroughly enjoy it. And the value of it is multiplied by our mindset. It's multiplied by how we feel about it. The value of that cup of coffee, is not its monetary value and how much the beans cost and the cup cost or whatever. It's how much value it gives to me. And it can give like that warm cloth that you were talking about then, the value of that could just be a passing part of someone's day. But in your day and in the context of your day, the value of that was one of the most valuable things of the entire time. And I think that perspective shift is, it's important, and it's something that we can, if we all take a step back and actually really think about the value of things in our lives, rather than just go acknowledge, okay, I've got a roof over my head. It's great. It's wonderful. But if I sit there and truly acknowledge the value of having a roof over my head, that's again, now feeling gratitude rather than just essentially going, yes, I am grateful. Rather than just acknowledging it, fully feeling it.
Yeah. Think about how everything comes into your life, how every single piece of clothing, your cell phone, everything is made. My boyfriend is a machinist. So like he knows how everything is made. And so he definitely,
I was going to say, when you said before,
it's a constant reminder of that.
When you said before you were wondering about dating, I was going to make a joke, but I thought it was going to be insensitive. I'm like, you need to if you're worried about a boyfriend that doesn't mind packing down the thing, is like, you need an engineer or a mechanic, but you've got a machinist. So maybe my joke wasn't that poorly tasted. He's
also in a wheelchair like himself as well. So it's really funny us traveling together. It's definitely double trouble for sure. But in terms of the perspective, I actually have another good analogy that I kind of talk about in my book at the end, where there's that childhood song, like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. If life is but a dream, which according to quantum physics, it definitely is, and it's all about like relativity and like what you're looking at, literally perspective. So if life is a dream, your perception is literally the paddle that you're steering your boat. You're steering your life with your perception, with that oar. It's so important. Like literally, like there's so much shit in the world, but there's so much good stuff in the world. You know, there's positive and negatives to absolutely every single thing. So it's just, what do you want to focus on?
Yeah.
What do you want to focus on?
Yeah, I strongly agree. Are you okay going over an hour?
Yeah,
I can go
forever.
Because it seems like I'm trying. If it feels like I'm trying to rush you towards one thing, it's because I'm conscious of your time, and there is, and obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff that I still want to get to, but I never agreed with you in terms of ability to go over before. We can do a
6-hour session. It's fine.
6. That would actually be my longest. The longest currently is someone who's in chat. It was 4.5.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But okay. What I wanted to ask, obviously now, is moving into, like, you know, right now you write about, you know, travel, and you access the world. You like write about wheelchair travel. Obviously, I want to ask how you got into travel, but a different question before that is, when, obviously, with the accident being a road accident, with being in the car, was that ever something that you took fear? You were fearful about, like, being in the car, like, again, or traveling? Was that a fearful experience at first?
No, actually, like, no, not at all. Which was weird. My little sister and my mom, yes, definitely. And they equate that to the fact that I blacked out. So I didn't actually remember the rolling and so on. But that's all changed now, because when I was in New Zealand in March of 2020, and on the second to last day that I was there, I was driving along. I literally had done everything that I possibly had planned. And I literally just, like, took out my map, found a destination, found, like, a, you know, pretty green spot, you know, a lake. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. So I just literally just hit that and went to this lake, beautiful lake. Took forever to get out there. It was like this very windy, rocky road, which, I mean, I'd been driving all around New Zealand. So I've been driving on all sorts of roads, no problem. And so I was leaving this lake, and the road just kind of bent to the right a little bit and down. And I wasn't going fast at all, but just, yeah, the speed and the lack of traction, because it was the one part of the road where there actually wasn't a set of tracks, because it was, like I said, it was a dirt road. And for the most part, you know, there was tracks that I was following this whole time, but, like, on this particular bend, there was no tracks or whatnot. And it was just a solid sheet of rocks. And my car instantly just started sliding. And there was a ravine on one side and a hillside on the other. So I was trying to push the car towards the hillside and not the ravine, but the cross slope was so extreme. The car was so heavy, and I didn't have 4-wheel drive, that the car was just so heavy and hit one of those water ditches on the side of the road and just went flying into the air, rolled a couple times into the ravine. And I remember actually the car still rolling, and looking up at the passenger side going, oh shit, I'm gonna have to fucking crawl out of the passenger window to get out of the car. But luckily the car landed straight, no broken bones. I was still alive. I'm like, oh shit. But I was pretty far deep in this ravine, and I was out literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, I hadn't seen, like, any cars as it was throughout this entire trip. And so I'm like, okay, I need to get closer to the road. Luckily the car still worked, but there was no way of going the way that I went. So I just tried to drive around and find an opening to a fence. Cause I'm like, yeah, there has to be an opening somewhere. And so I found it, but it was up this really, really steep hill, and the car I couldn't stay in the car and drive close enough in order to open up the gate. I had to actually physically get out of the car. And then I actually had to scale up this fence, like literally cliffhanger, like one arm rung after another, just praying to God that my arms would just reach and be able to grab the next one, and got to the top and tried to lift the latch, and my fingers were just a 1/4 of an inch too short. And I'm like, okay, fingers, like, I don't care. Somehow you're going to have to grow. Like, you're just going to have to grow. Like, this is just what has to happen, because nobody is around. And, like, this is just what has to happen. So somehow, like, they did, and was able to get the latch open. The gate almost knocks me out of my wheelchair because it's so heavy. And I scaled back down the fence. But the ground is so soft, it's like sand. that it knocks me out of my wheelchair. At this point, I'm like, why do I even have this wheelchair? This is just worthless. So I throw the wheelchair in the car, get myself into the car, try to go up the hill where I was at. Didn't really work. Car starts smoking and spinning. Try to go up the best way, still doesn't work. So then I'm just like, oh shit, so I'm gonna have to climb up this thing. So I grab my bag with my passport, and the little bit of water that I had left, crawl up the ravine. Luckily, New Zealand has very strong, firmly rooted grass. So I was able to use the grass as a rope, where I would pull with one hand and push with the other. And then I would switch off, and turn the other way and switch off the directions I was doing things to not tire out one grouping of muscles. Got to the very top, and then I had to crawl across this very large meadow because there was so much shrubbery and bushes everywhere that nobody would see me anyways. Like, New Zealand grass was just so damn tall, and I'm laying in the ground because I'm paralyzed. And so I'm like, okay, I need to get to the road. I see a shed. I'm already mentally preparing myself. Okay, like, worst case scenario, I'm going to have to sleep here for the night, and then crawl my ass down the road. Eventually somebody will find me. I will be rescued. I just didn't know when. But I was going to survive, and this was going to happen. So I'm just mentally preparing myself. Okay, I might have to sleep in a shed. So I'm crawling again. Still have not seen or heard a single car during this whole time. Scream for help, just in case, a couple times, just in case. And then finally I hear a car, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm screaming like, help. I'm waving my bag in the air. By the grace of God, their windows were rolled down and they heard me. They pull over, and there was 4 people. They come running out of the car, and they're like, oh my God, are you okay? And I didn't want them to worry, thinking that I was more injured than I was, because I was perfectly fine. I mean, everything literally, considering, had gone absolutely perfect. I remember even as I was climbing up, just cracking up, because I was talking to New Zealand, just saying oh, thank you, New Zealand, for saving me. And it was such a beautiful day. The weather was perfect. I wasn't worried about any snakes or critters coming after me or anything like that. So I was, perfect scenario. And
the perfect scenario to crash a car.
Exactly. But I was thanking New Zealand for their grass. I'm like, oh, New Zealand, I love your grass. I'm thanking New Zealand grass. And of course, then I started thinking about like marijuana smoke, and that just starts making me laugh. And I'm like, oh my gosh, New Zealand grass. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's too funny. And so the people are running towards me, and like I said, I don't want them to worry. And I'm like, I'm okay. Don't worry. I'm paralyzed, but I've been already paralyzed for 20 years. And then I just collapse. And they come running over to me, and they're like, oh, all cool. And they're like, oh, so do you want us to get your wheelchair? I'm like, yes. Okay, let's start with that. So they go down and get the wheelchair. They were 4 government workers out in the middle of nowhere measuring pond scum or something like that. And they were just going home for the day. Super lucky, super lucky that they found me, and took me back to the hotel I was at. And the next morning, I was actually flying to Australia. But before that, went to go see the doctor just to make sure, I'm flying, make sure safe to fly and whatnot. And I go to the doctor and tell him what had happened. And the doctor's just like, and you're here right now and you're telling me this? Yeah, you're okay to fly. So long story short, so now I know what it's like to roll. I 100% know what it's like to roll, and then some. My mom and my little sister, they passed out after the accident. I didn't pass out. I was still alive. And then I had to fucking crawl up a mountain and get myself rescued. So, and I'm still not afraid of driving, just because I think, especially even after that, and then it was basically COVID, had hit and everything like that. And my mom was freaking out and everything. And I didn't tell her anything what had happened until I was actually home. And I'm just if God wanted me to go, if that was my time, I had some outs, I had some opportunities. So obviously I'm not going anywhere. Obviously COVID is not going to get me. I'm going to be okay.
Amazing. I read that story last night, and I was just like, it's just absolutely phenomenal. Like the fact that you climbed up a hill is one thing, saying but climbing up a hill when you can only use your upper body strength, is just absolutely phenomenal. So this was this on a journey that you were writing about? Is all your journeys, are they for writing, or are they for vacations, or is it a bit of both? Do you ever kind of go just to enjoy yourself?
I can never really turn my brain off entirely now, from writing and kind of advocating for access and whatnot. I am like at moments, I guess, but overall, I'm always on. I'm always kind of working, always kind of observing, making notes and whatnot. But I give myself mental breaks too. I know that's important. That's what, nature is really great for. Because if I go to evaluate a park or whatnot, of course, I'm making details about slopage and length and trail makeup and where the bathrooms are and drinking fountains and stuff like that. But then there's still the moments where yep, I'm just hiking. I'm just in nature, and I'm just loving it.
Yeah. What was the starting point? Was there a specific trip where you decided to turn this into a project?
It was basically two trips that kind of lit my fire, because it was the comparison of the two. When I graduated high school, a group of friends and some teachers and stuff got a really good deal to go on a trip to Europe, to go to Greece. And so there was 50 or maybe a little bit more than that of us who rented a bus and toured all around Greece. And this was before the Olympics, before there was any curb cutouts, before there was any access to anything. So it was not accessible at whatsoever. Anytime we would have to go into a restaurant, I would have to be piggybacked and someone would have to take apart my wheelchair, which is very narrow. It's a very tiny, tiny, tiny wheelchair. But still, the doorways were just extra narrow. They would have to take apart my wheelchair, get the wheelchair in, put it back together, and then sit me back down. And that would be the same if I had to use the bathroom or anything like that too. So definitely got real friendly with all my friends. They carried me up the Acropolis and so on. I didn't miss anything. Went to all the different islands and absolutely epic. And so there was that trip. And then years later, I went to Berlin when I was a sophomore in college. And that was completely different, where I'm there's accessible transportation. And even though not all the stations are accessible, some of them are. That was a really big deal, completely different from Greece. And the fact that they had a hotel with a roll-in shower and a handheld shower nozzle and, elevators in some places and public restrooms at hotels that I could use and so on. That comparison really lit a fire on me, because I was just wow, here are these two countries not that far away from each other, still in Europe, and these are modern times, and yet they are completely different. And so I'm well, what does everything else look like? I want to see, I want to know, I'm curious. And so I've always just been very, very curious. Like I said, my parents were both into nature, did a lot of camping and hiking growing up. That's all I did. And I remember being on the trails all the time when I was younger and just wanting to run ahead enough so nobody would be around me. So I would just have the forest, a little moment to myself, and just be able to see okay, well, what's around this bend? Well, if I climb up on this rock, what does it look like? Or what's, what does the angle, over here look like? And I was just always just so curious, what it looks like. What does it feel like? What is it all about? And I think that curiosity has definitely, crossed over to travel life and just wanting to know, okay, what's out there? What can I do? How can I do it? And now I've been to, Japan by myself, been to Easter Island with my boyfriend. Like I said, we both can't walk or stand. We rented a car. We had portable hand controls that we brought with us, and, rented a vehicle and drove around, and, they had some access, but we just, we made it work, we made it work and had an amazing time. But it's fun. Like, I feel like honestly, I've always kind of wanted a challenge where like, I never really wanted just like a normal average life, like I never really wanted just to do the same thing. Like I wanted a challenge. To be cheesy, like I remember so wholeheartedly in 4th grade seeing Star Wars for the first time, and that just blowing my mind, like absolutely blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're saying things like that I felt and I've been feeling, and it's the Force and blah blah blah, and like and I always kind of wanted, like that Luke Skywalker, like adventure, like I wanted to be like physically and mentally and emotionally tested, and like, oh shit, like, careful what you wish for and really want, and like, it's like the parallels of like my dad dying, and just like, there are crazy parallels to that story and my own.
Since then, what's been kind of outside of Greece and Germany, what has been the best and worst in regards to accessibility?
Well, South America definitely is very challenging. I'm still obsessed with that whole region of the world, and I want to go back and see more and more and more. And but it just requires a lot more planning. I have to go with like a tour company because like transportation and all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't have to go with a tour company. I take that back because me and my boyfriend actually did go to Chile, and we rented a vehicle because we had a friend there, and we were able to get around. But access in South America is definitely way more challenging. Trying to find a bathroom, like sometimes, like if you're just out and about, just doing things. Not every attraction will have an accessible bathroom or that kind of a thing. So then I got into the point of then, getting kind of dehydrated, not wanting to drink as much, and that kind of gets problematic. But I definitely make it work. And it's definitely not, I haven't crossed it off the list too. There's still a lot of places in South America that I'm dying to go see. And also Southeast Asia too. I'm also very much obsessed with that part of the world that I would like to go explore. And I'm Scottish and Swedish too. So definitely those are still very high on my list as well. In terms of, things not really being that great. People think America is like, oh, you have the ADA and blah, blah, blah. There's still so many things in America that are not accessible, that are just so frustrating. Even in very modern towns, even the town that I live in, the Bay Area. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to make an acupuncture appointment because my back was really bothering me. And I just got to a point where I'm just like, okay, like maybe this will help me. And, didn't think anything of it, assumed that it was going to be accessible. No, it was on the 2nd floor and there's no elevator. And, I would think like a medical office, you're helping people feel better, all these things that just didn't make any sense to me. But, I run into things like that a lot. Or cobblestones, people in older American countries, like in the South, namely like Charleston and Savannah, beautiful, like had met amazing people there. Met a couple mean people there, but like overall met like some really amazing people there. But I feel like their mindset on inclusion is, I don't know, a little bit negative, where it's like they just feel like, oh yes, this is historical and we don't want to, damage, the original structure of the building, and you're making us change history and blah, 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 blah. And which I understand where they're coming from, and that's all fine and dandy. But I've been to Japan where it's significantly older and they still find ways to make their temples and shrines and things more accessible. And they don't damage the original structure. Maybe they might have a back entrance, or they'll do a ramp over, the threshold, or whatnot. So like the original threshold isn't damaged. There's so many different ways to make things more accessible, but just saying like, no, we can't do it. That to me, like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, no, like we're not even going to think about it. We're not going to consider other options. Just no. I'm like that to me is just not in my vocabulary. That's just like, okay, no, like there's options. There's literally options for everything. Like there's always different ways of looking at things and trying things.
Yeah. What about some of the best?
Some of the best, Cologne, Germany actually was really surprisingly accessible. I mean, like I was really surprised in terms of access and getting around, and actually in terms of traveling, I'm trying to think like if that actually might be the destination thus far that I've been to where I've seen the most people out and about in wheelchairs, just in public, just like doing their thing. Yeah. Like I was just blown away. I'm like, what is this? Is there like a convention or something happening? Like, I mean, it was odd because I just like wherever I go, even, San Diego, which is like definitely one of the most accessible places in the world. And, I don't see that many wheelchair people just out and about on the regular. So it was so refreshing. Barcelona also is incredibly accessible. They've actually done a really great job in terms of access. China is horrible. China is absolutely horrible. They made accessibility for the Beijing Olympics because they were required to. But then I've learned from different tour companies that actually they have removed, I don't know about all of it, but a huge portion of the accessible features after the Olympics were over because they felt that they didn't have a need for it, that there wasn't enough demand from their own citizens and tourists or something. I don't know.
Right.
That makes no sense.
I mean, that's even worse. It's like, we can't do anything about this, and that's bad enough. But yeah, we've done something about this, and now we're just going to undo it because there's not enough demand. It's like, what is the actual harm in leaving it just leaving it there?
Yeah, I don't understand. Actually, I remember meeting a guy who was from China, and I'm like, how do you get around? Like, what do you do? And he's just like, I don't really use my wheelchair. I'm like, okay, again, like, how do you get around? And he uses a little motorcycle. Like, cause he can go like up and down sidewalks, he can get around all these narrow passageways, and there's a couple like convenience stores and whatnot that know him. So he's able to, fit through there and get whatever he needs. And, nobody looks at him funny or anything. He gets the job done. I'm like, okay, there we go. We get it done.
we often think it when we've been to the Acropolis twice, and the first time that we went was 2 years ago, and they were only beginning to introduce the accessibility. They've got there's an elevator at the side now, and they've built it off to the side and given it its own access that doesn't go over. So they've managed to find a way to incorporate it. But we actually overheard a tour guide. He wasn't saying it in a malicious way, but he was basically, we were just there on our own a few weeks ago, and we overheard a tour guide say that there's a lot of complaints from the locals about the accessibility because they feel like it is kind of messing with a historical site, and there's a lot of debate as to how far it is acceptable to take it. And again,
which I understand.
But yeah, it's, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is it's supposed. We sort of got to honor the people that built it, but I don't know. I think if we've decided that these things are to be accessed as tourist attractions, then we need to honor the tourists that go into them. And it's
I think with the Acropolis, they need to do something like they do at Half Dome at Yosemite now, where like they only sell like a certain amount of tickets like for that year. They do like a lottery system, and that's it. Because I feel like at like so many feet, and with it being accessible, then that just means unfortunately, I feel like people who might be significantly unhealthy and overweight, and like really haven't taken care of themselves, I feel like those might be more of like the people that citizens are concerned with, that they just don't want to see like a bunch of unhealthy, overweight tourists, like just trampling over, this historical site, and not appreciating, like the value in it, and just wanting to see it and take their Instagram pictures, and get, climb over, these areas that you're not supposed to, and damaging buildings, and just so they can get, the ultimate picture, without actually really giving respect to that area. I'm all for creating access, but I've always been we're not trying to pave over the rainforest, but allow us to also be a part of this world and experience at least a part of it, we all every single person can experience every single little aspect, but give us something, so allow us to, dip our toes in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the wheelchair travel that you do, site that you run, is it, as well as you said, campaigning for accessibility is part of what you do as well? So you're obviously informing people on what the accessibility is like, so that they can maybe learn about it if they're planning their own travels. But is campaigning for accessibility something that you also do?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I work with the FAA here, the airline industries here, which I'm doing my small part. There's definitely people who are literally dedicating all of their advocating lives to that, just in general. But it is an aspect of what I do. But yeah, working with the National Park Service as well. I've been working with them now for many, 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 many years, helping to educate them about, language, on their site, what we're looking for, expectations, how to just to better educate their staff, how to better educate the public on what they have available. And then, if I go to a destination, a hotel, for example, and I see weird access things like putting the rack of towels above the toilet, on a shelf that can't be reached, or, all those kinds of weird, crazy things, I always bring it to their attention. Hey, this is an accessible room. Have the towels where people can reach them, reasonably, and that doesn't cost anything. That literally just means moving the shelf. That doesn't really incur much cost for the hotel, or, city ramps and stuff too. I've definitely been brought up bigger things in Charleston, they have this battery walkway along the water, and it just ends at stairs. But then there's just one set of stairs, and then it continues completely flat. And there's plenty enough space. The staircase is crazy wide. It's so wide. there's plenty enough space just to make part of that to be a ramp or something, which they've done, which is incredible. So yeah, it's definitely advocating as I go, for sure. Bringing things to their, people's attention. But then I'm posting a lot of pictures and videos on Pinterest and, YouTube and whatnot, just to give examples as well. So when, hotel is looking to remodel or whatnot, and they're Googling oh yes, what's some good accessible features, hopefully, my pictures will be found because I have them all tagged and stuff the right way. And, writing about things that don't work as well. So hotels and destinations can be aware of what doesn't work. And then even actually, I just gave a speech, I don't know, a week or so ago, to a bunch of marketing people, just about what they can do to make their destination accessible now, and talking to businesses just about putting your information on your website, please. Just tell us what accessible features you have. One, it's going to boost your SEO, period. You're going to have a whole page, dedicated to that. Your SEO points will definitely benefit from that. Marketing benefit. And then it just allows us to know what to expect. Is there a side door? Is there a back door? Is there public transportation nearby? Is there not public transportation nearby? If you're an aquarium and you only have one handicap parking spot, maybe I'm not going to plan there on a holiday weekend on a Saturday, because chances are I'm not going to get that handicap spot. It's just things that people can think about in order to, to plan, so they can actually use the business. Because every business is oh yeah, we're accessible. Oh, there's not really much to say, but every business is so different. Even a hotel chain, from hotel to hotel, they might have the same lamps and the same tile, but where they have everything placed and the actual setup is different. So people need to know what's available.
Yeah.
They need to know about access. Like, so let us know. And then and not even just people who have limited mobility. I'm also talking about people who are losing their sight or rely on screen readers and keyboard readers. That was also something that I like significantly emphasized, that they need to have much better websites that are programmed for that, because people who are not looking at the screen, they're not seeing what you're seeing. You know, they're seeing like this jumbled madness of words and like repeating, and they're just trying to figure out what you are and what you're about. And it's just absolute madness to try to figure out if your website isn't organized. And then if you're doing videos and stuff like that, not just having closed captioning from what somebody's saying, but actually having audio descriptive captioning. Like you're creating a video, like what's the vibe of the video? Is it happy? Like what's the mood? Is the sun shining? Is it a rainy day? Is it calm? Is there a fireplace burning? You know, are there kids screaming? Like what's going on in the background? What is the video all about? Like what does a person look like talking? Like allow us to be a part of that as well, you know, for people who can't see. Don't just be like, oh, like this is what Ashely's saying. It's like, oh no, like she's some white chick with like long hair who loves to wear black, and she's wearing all black right now. And you know, like those types of, they're small things, but they make a big difference. Allows people to, creates a more inclusive world, allows people to feel more connected and just part of things.
When you bring these things to people's attention, is it mostly accepted, mostly rejected, or somewhere in the middle?
Mostly accepted. Most of the time I get like, oh my gosh, like we've never heard this before.
Yeah.
Like there's been like occasional times where I'm just like, no, like I think you probably have heard this before, like, but you're just trying to be nice and you're just putting on like a little salesman hat. But there has been like, yeah, a few times where I'm like, you know, I was in either Charleston or Savannah and trying to get into this restaurant that I found that looked really great. And they had a step. It wasn't that big, but it was like, you know, a step about that big. And sure, like in my manual wheelchair, I could get a little help and get in, no problem. But I'm thinking about somebody with a power wheelchair. And I'm like, well, like, how would they get in? And if this person were just to create like a little tiny wooden ramp, or literally just get a 2x4 board, you know, and lay that out, that would have solved the problem. And I told him this. I'm just like, you know, why don't you have that? And he was just like, no. He was just like, I don't need to do that, you know. And oh, this is a historical building and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, again, I'm not telling you to build a ramp. It could be portable, and you could have a sign saying like when I've been to New York a number of times, you know, super old city, and they have all sorts of stairs everywhere. But in front of the buildings, they'll have a window that will have a little sign, like a little accessible sign that will say, oh, please ask us for assistance. Or sometimes they might even have like a little doorbell that I can ring. I remember going to a restaurant that literally had 2 sets of stairs in New York, long sets of stairs. And they had a little buzzer saying for assistance. I'm like, okay, like, let's see, like, if this actually is going to work. I was very skeptical, and they came out instantly, so fast, and just like had the ramps out and like got me in there. And I had never seen anything like that. It was so organized, so very organized and efficient and attentive and beautiful. I was just like, yeah, it's, you can create access. It's 100% possible. Don't tell me no.
And especially when you see like places like the one you just mentioned in New York, creating access where you look at it and think, oof, this would be difficult. Yeah. Versus situations where you go, just a portable ramp. You know, we have them in various places here in the UK where, like, you know, especially trains being the big one, because we've got that whole mind the gap thing. It's like we have gaps between platform and train, but as a result of that, there are portable ramps for specifically, and you know there are staff. And I know that's not always perfect, and they're not in every single station. But I think it's like it's showing what is possible. You don't need to. If they're talking about there being a historic building, you know, you don't need to change the building. You just need to, it's like, yeah, it's a historic building, and those tables and chairs that are in there weren't in there originally. They're not part of the original design. So How about a ramp? You know, that high chair that you've allocated for a baby to sit in, so like at the table, that's not part of the original design either. So it is. It's especially when the solution is as obvious and straightforward. And I suppose when you see situations where you can compare it to a less obvious solution, but they've figured out a way to make it work, it shows whether it's a priority to the person or not.
Question in where you're at in talking about the ramps at the train stations. They had that in Japan, which I was so impressed with. They literally had that at every single station where I would walk in, have my ticket, and the guy would be like, "Oh, do you want me to help you, with the ramp and whatever?" And I would say yes. And, he would ask me what station I was getting off at, and he would call ahead to that train attendant. And literally every single time there was always somebody there with a ramp to like lay it out for me, and I would be on my way. And I guess I'm wondering why there's not that availability at every train station where you're at. I mean, honestly, they don't even have that in New York. Like New York needs that. When I went to Japan and I saw that, I'm like, why is this not in New York? Like, I don't understand. Like, why doesn't New York have this? This is like such a big issue for New York, and this would 100% solve it and create more jobs. So I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think so a lot of our train stations aren't even staffed anymore. So like there's not like, so it's an automated machine for buying tickets and it used to be a case that where there was a similar sort of thing. I've seen it many times where a person would be helped on with the ramp, and they would know what station that person's getting off at. They would coordinate that, and the person would be there. And I did see it once where we were on the train and the person was waiting for the ramp, and then when the ramp came, the person who was responsible for bringing the ramp was also responsible for something else that had happened at the same time. And that's the only time I've ever seen it where someone was sat waiting for it. But in terms of, and again, in London, it's more so there. And I live in the Northwest where, well, our trains aren't as well. But I think in Japan, I think so much of that, a lot of this is a cultural thing in the terms of that efficiency and I remember I traveled to Japan a few years back, and like the big thing you'll notice there is that a train is like never late, not by like ever, like just never ever. And if it's late by a minute, that's considered like that's considered a major transgression on the part of the staff.
Pedestrians do not have the right of way. Traffic is number one. Like they will not stop. Pedestrians do not have the right of way like they do in America. It's definitely different. And the culture thing, them just looking out for you though, that was so, you mean like you nailed it. Like I just felt like everywhere that I would go, I would literally open up a map, and within 1 second, somebody would walk up to me like, "Oh, like, do you need help? Like, where are you trying to go?" And I'm like, oh, hi. Like, I'm trying to go here. People would offer to push me. They just have this culture of just, making sure everything's like efficient and everybody can get to where they wish to go, which I thought was so empowering and beautiful.
Yeah. And at the same time, I don't recall seeing, I don't even think any Japanese people in wheelchairs. So a lot of this effort that they're actually making, like the opposite of what you said in China, it's not for actually their own pop. It's for whoever needs it, which is it's fantastic. I mean, the truncated domes, like those yellow bumps that you see like near sidewalks to help people who are blind, to signal, it's the end of the sidewalk and whatever. They put those in like the 70s, to get people to get to the train stations in the 70s. Like I went to like one of the Japanese museums, and I learned about the bullet train was around that same time, and they put in the truncated domes. I'm like, oh my God, like, did they invent this? I think they were the first major city to implement this. And so it was so great traveling around there. Like if I didn't know where the train station was or where the elevator was, if I could find, those yellow bumps, I'm like, okay, I would eventually be able to find my way to the train station and to an elevator. It was fantastic. So forward thinking and innovative. It's amazing. There's definitely a lot to improve and a lot to learn, and like we can look to other cultures that are doing it right, I guess. I'm not surprised that the Germans are also doing it right. They're, again, renowned for engineering. We must have an engineering solution for everything. I think culture plays such a huge role in it. So yeah, and again with America, you've got 50 different cultures. you are not one country.
People just don't know what to do sometimes. Like with me, they're like, "Oh my God, should I ask her? Should I not ask her? Should I say hi? Should I look at her?" Like,
no, honestly, never. I don't think there's any country with a more diverse group of people than America. It's like, and it makes sense when you kind of figure out things like that. You have like difference of state and federal laws and local legislatures and all of that stuff, and it's just like, wow, I remember going to Florida for the first time when I was 12, and sales tax being a thing that was, for the first time I'd ever seen it. I'm like, so I want to buy this chocolate bar and it's 99 cents, and then I go up with my dollar and it was $1.20, and I'm like, what is this? I can't handle it. But then it's different from state to state, or sometimes city to city. It's like how do you keep track of all of this stuff?
Yeah, and and that's like access, and that's what I say. Literally, that's what I say about access in the United States. People are like, oh, how's access? I'm like, state to state, city to city, like it really changes. I'm in the Bay Area. Yeah, access is pretty good. But if I go towards the mountains, towards the Sierra Mountains, towards Lake Tahoe, access starts to get a little wobbly. It really, really depends, like where you're at. Question for you. I know this is like a mental show.
It is a mental show.
It's all mental. It's all mental.
Yeah,
it's all in the mind, That's what the Beatles said. So true. Do you ever get people, since you have an invisible disability, are you ever in a situation, like a public situation, where somebody has like come up to you because of something that how you're acting or how you've reacted, that your mental disability is very obvious, and somebody kind of like approaches you that you don't know, like a stranger, like trying to console you or offer you some advice or like help you in any way?
No, it's usually the opposite. And in fact, I've so the only kind of visible version of my disability is when I become symptomatic of the bottom end of bipolar and become overwhelmed. So if I get into a depressive episode and overwhelmed at the same time, and if to the outside world, I would probably look like a stereotypical autistic person at that point, because I become very sensory overwhelmed. I become like lights, sounds, things start bothering me. But generally, I've found that people tend to just walk on by. But I masked my mental health. My mental health was only I was the only person in my life that knew about it between 14 and 25. So I'd learned to mask it around people so that they wouldn't actually ever see it. And the closest it came to being an actual problem for me was only early this year when travel opened back up. And the first time being back in an airport became very overstimulating. The security line was very, very long. And then my bag got sent through to the other side of the x-ray. And I was literally about to go and sit in a corner and rock at this point. And I ended up taking myself into breathing exercises and stuff. But one time that I've had a panic attack in public, I was in Tesco, which is one of our big stores, like Walmart type thing. Not quite as big as Walmart, more of like a fresh market or whatever. Doesn't have like washing machines on aisle 4 or anything like that. So I just had a panic attack in the toilet roll aisle. So I just sat on a mountain of toilet roll, but I was there for a good 15 minutes. And obviously the security probably would have been able to see it on the cameras. People were walking past. It was late at night, so there wasn't a huge number of people in the store. But that's kind of one of the things is like a lot of people, if you see someone who's clearly agitated or whatever, most people don't approach them. Like people don't know what to do. And
how did that make you like? How does that make you feel? I mean, like in those moments, like, do you feel even like more alone, or like, do you wish that somebody would be like, hey, like, are you okay, or just anything?
Yeah, usually by the time I'm in that state, I've stopped thinking at all about what other people are seeing. It's the build up to that. It's the what if people see. And I find that actually pushes a lot of people towards the actual, I don't like it overreaction, but the reaction that they have, it pushes a lot of people towards that, because then when you start thinking about what people will do when they see, you always see the worst case scenario of it, and it makes you feel like a freak, and then it's literally, that's the thing that pushes, like, you've got one last button left to press and here it comes. So by the time
the judgment is the worst.
Looking back on it, it's quite hurtful. I mean, the worst time being, there was a time 12 years ago I tried to take my own life, and when I ran away from the hospital because my mum was giving me a guilt trip about how selfish could I be. But I, again, don't like people when they say that, but could understand why she did at the time. And I bumped into one of my friends, and one of my friends was just like, oh, he's just doing it for attention, and walked off. And I was still lucid enough for that to really, really hurt. And so that's, it doesn't feel great in the slightest. But usually if I'm at the point where people would notice there's something wrong with me, I've usually gone past the point of caring, because before that
you don't even like hear them.
Before that, I might be kind of like stimming and doing stuff like this with my hands, but really I can do that in my pockets. I've been doing it all the way through this interview. I'm not nervous right now, but I stim a lot, so I've been doing that through this interview. And I would like to say no one notices. Everyone's like, we all do. We see it every single time you look down there. It's like you've dropped your fidget ring again. I only found out that, like, I did that. I've only started using things like fidget rings and stuff this year, which has actually helped quite a lot, because normally it'd be like I'd be doing with my fingers or something, or I blink extra, or like my body language would start rocking or anything like that. So those things, then you start becoming hyper aware of whether people are looking at you, and when you become hyper aware of whether people are looking at you,
then it just escalates.
Yes,
then it just keeps going and going.
You do more. Instead of basically the whole thing masking down, and then you do more. But it's funny because of all of that. Really, I never really considered it to be a disability until I started talking to other people. And it was much easier to, like, when I was talking to other people, it's very easy to see what it stops that person from being able to do, and what it's, and with myself, like, I didn't really kind of think about to what level it stopped me from doing things until only a few years back. And it was only really in it's like in the whole fact that I get days where I just cannot work, like I just cannot function, and again, because of, I suppose, internalized stigma and internalized ableism from the whole idea of, it's in your head, so you can just get over it, if you just try hard enough, like, or and especially like when deadlines and things like that come up, it's like it's almost like there's an emergency mode in my head that's like, right, we're overriding the mental health now because we've got no choice, which makes you then start going, well, if I can do that in emergency situations, then surely I can do it in every situation. It's like, no. And I remember recently saying, like, because I work very, very, very fast on things, and one of my work colleagues that from part of my day job was like, oh, imagine if you could just do this all the time. I'm like, and it was only this time that I finally got to the point of accepting the fact that I can't. And I said, just don't put that kind of pressure on me. I said, because ultimately it's like, if you want a year's worth of work done in a year, then cool, you'll get that from me. It just might be in like a 2-month burst here of what, it's like, it might be like a Friday afternoon, I'll do all the work for the week. I'm saying, but if you then think, oh, this guy works fast, let's multiply it. It's like, I'll end up doing half a year's work in the same amount, because ultimately I'll burn out quicker, and I always tried to push through that as well, like historically. And whereas now I'm a lot more compassionate with myself on it. And if I find myself in one of those situations, I'll be like, oh, okay.
Oh my God, everything you're saying is like describing me. I'm like, I totally know exactly what that feels like. I have a funny story. About not wanting attention and whatnot. Like I don't like attention a lot. Like when I was younger, like at birthday parties, like overwhelmed the crap out of me. Like I would literally have to like pull a friend and just play with one friend like at a time, like at a birthday party. And then sometimes I would be found like playing by myself, like in my closet, because like everybody wanted a piece of me and I just like couldn't like give it to everybody. You know, I just like would get so overwhelmed. Like, and it's actually the same reason too why I've never really wanted to get married too. I just don't want to have that shit, like that day, that whole thing has just never been appealing to me, that day. No problem with, you know, commitment or anything like that. But yeah, so I was, you know, don't like attention. And so now here I am in a wheelchair in high school, trying to blend in and be normal and whatnot. And I show up to school late one day, which is already nerve-wracking as heck. You know, everybody's basically in the classrooms, which means I'm gonna have to like transfer while everybody else is already, you know, seated. So everybody's gonna be watching me. I'm gonna come through the door and everybody's gonna be watching me. So that alone was just nerve-wracking in itself. You know, just opening up the door and like going to my seat, literally like I was having like a heart attack, like just doing that. So I'm trying to be cool though. I'm trying to have my shit together, you know, like it's no big deal, like calm, cool, and collect Ashely, like blah, 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 you know, and I'm all flustered, you know, and my friend's like, oh, like, why are you late? You know, I'm like, oh, my mom or whatever happened. And I'm taking my backpack off and I'm just all super flustered that I'm not really paying attention. And the weight of my backpack is so heavy that when I take it off, it like totally throws off my balance and I fall backwards. And so this is also when the teacher is starting her lecture a little bit, you know, we're talking about math and whatnot and getting the day started. So I'm trying to be all quiet. So I fall backwards, make a loud sound, and my foot smacks the table. The table flips up and lands on another table, just like the loudest possible noise. Like I'm on the ground, like my books are everywhere, like just absolutely everything, like just worst case scenario. So yeah, that was literally like, yeah, having a heart attack where I'm like trying to be all calm and have my shit together and 100% made it worse.
Yeah, it's a very small version of that was like I said before, like where I was trying to subtly put a jacket on, and obviously as I'm trying to be subtle, if I'd have just gone, I'll just put my jacket on and put, you know, like, and actually me trying to be all like, yes, I'm a ninja, I can totally slink into this and like, just knock the microphone off the table, knock over the, you know, it's, exactly. But yeah, there's an expression, and it's not directly, well, it is in Kung Fu Panda, but it's often when we meet our destiny on the path, we choose to avoid it. And I'm often like, okay, I think that especially like that whole question of what happens if people see me like react like this or whatever. Sometimes the path I choose to avoid it is exactly what causes it to happen.
Exactly. So, you're just you're adding more like negative energy like to something, you know, you're just emphasizing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump over. Well, in a few minutes, I'm going to jump over to questions from chat, and we've got a couple have come in. But I just want to kind of check: is there anything else from your side of things that I've not asked that you think is really important and that you'd like to put out there?
I mean, probably.
Anything that springs to mind. I mean, as you said, you could do 6 hours. But and I don't.
There's lots of things that we talked about, like revelations. I do have. I have a poem that I wrote from my book Confined to Aligned that I had marked called "You'll See." That I felt like it was appropriate. At least last night, I marked it and thought it was appropriate for today. You'll see. You'll see the fight is not over, nor can it be won. That sometimes to give in makes you the stronger one. You'll see. Fear is an illusion, a mind game of the senses. More can be realized without being defensive. You'll see. To thy own self be true, the best version of you. You'll see. I make up you and you make up me, forever as one infinity. I guess, so the reason why I wanted to mainly bring this one up is the fact that, not to always feel like that we have to overcome, these barriers like in life, that accepting something doesn't mean that you're weak or that you are saying that you're defeated. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to give that point of view as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a theme at the very beginning of today's session when someone said, some days I just haven't got the fight. And I know we were talking about the idea that actually a fighter doesn't fight every day. A fighter has to rest. A fighter, some days the best thing you can actually do for a fight is to sit back and to let things unfold the way they're unfolding whilst you recuperate your energy so that you can come back stronger and
definitely
and fight again another time.
Definitely. I'm a Leo, so I'm a lion, so I have all this adrenaline and rush. I can go out for the kill and do all that, but then I'm like, I need a nap now. Be like this all the time.
I was going to say, first of all, Cassandra is one of my mods over here. She looks after chat. I've just mispronounced Cassandra. Sorry. So they look after chat quite a lot of times, but they're from Australia, so they've already gone to bed. And accessibility. Two of their biggest things are accessibility and astrology. So the fact that you've talked about accessibility for the whole podcast and then mentioned your star sign at the end, Cass is going to be like, I'm not going to put their accent on. I'm not. This time I'm not. But they'll be like,
I love astrology and all that stuff. Oh yeah, the universe is magnificent.
We've just got a couple of questions from chat before we finish up, if that's cool. Number one is, are places that refuse accessibility options typically less maintained?
That have less accessibility? No, I've been actually to some really nice new places, brand new construction, and then they just get some very crucial things just all wrong. And I'm like, you literally did not really think about this at all. You literally just had a contractor telling you what to do. You didn't think about, okay, if I sit here, what will this be like? If I was this person, what would my experience be like? That thought. It's very clear at some new places that no thought was put into things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely been to some really crappy places that have excellent access.
Okay. And obviously this is completely up to you if you want to answer this question. If you don't mind answering this, how do you fund these adventures? I can't imagine being able to afford such a journey off minimum wage.
Oh yeah, no. There's so many different ways. Of course, yeah, ads through the site. There's a ton of different products that I sell and promote on the site in various ways, doing speaking engagements for universities and institutions of all kinds that constantly just goes on and doesn't just cover travel, but spinal cord injury stuff and all that kind of stuff. Write for magazines, not just my own. And I know there's other ways, but I'm feeling the pressure and I'm trying to blink.
Yeah, I always find that.
I really hustle. If there's an opportunity, working with the National Park Service. I get a lot of contracted business and stuff too, that I literally just pimp myself out. If I see something that needs help, I'll talk to a city manager and whatnot, being like, hey, I can help you with this. Hey, you can hire me. And but yeah, it's definitely a lot of hustle and putting myself out there, and then just hustle and just jumping on any opportunity, because I just don't know what the outcome might be.
Yeah, absolutely. One final question from me. What's next for you?
Trip-wise or what?
Well, actually, let's go with what's next. We can. I meant kind of in the overall journey, as in is it with your projects and with writing, and is there any more books in the line? Is there?
Oh yeah. I have. I definitely have another book that I'm editing that is not quite ready to send to an actual editor. But definitely in the works with that book. And then I have another book besides that that's a bigger a bigger memoir. And the book actually that I'm almost done with, I actually started it as a screenplay because I have a friend of mine who works for Paramount, and sent it to her. And she was just like, I've never written a screenplay. So I thought it was like a good challenge and whatnot, and she was just like, yeah, actually, like, I think you need to write this as a book first and then a screenplay. So that was like her nice way of editing that for me. But, which I totally get, like, why she made those remarks and whatnot. But yeah, so, I mean, that would be really exciting. Definitely want to turn the book that I did write, into an Audible book. And then hopefully maybe even in different languages as well. Just because I feel that that's important. That was brought to my attention, and I definitely feel in today's world how important that is.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then I know there's other projects. I always have so many projects. I'm working on a painting for there was this organization, this hospital organization, that are going to be displaying all these different advocates for access. And they've hired people who are advocates themselves, who are also artists. So I'm one of those people to paint a picture. So I'm painting a picture of Miss Wheelchair Alabama on center stage and whatnot. So that's due December 1st.
And what about for travel then? Where's the next trip?
The next trip, going to be doing a speech down in LA in a couple months. But it's going to be my boyfriend and I's 10-year anniversary in February. So the first trip that we ever did together was a train trip from Oakland up to Vancouver, BC. It was a 24+ hour train ride. We're both in wheelchairs. We were in a car that was only big enough for one wheelchair. So we had to take apart one wheelchair. So we had like a little couch bed thing, and the toilet separated in the room with a curtain. So again, 24+ hours on a train ride, the first trip my boyfriend and I take together. No wheelchair space, super tight quarters. And so we're just like, okay, this is just going to make or break our relationship, and see how this is going to work.
Well, 10 years later, here we are.
Yeah, luckily, yeah, it did. So in order to commemorate that, I'm looking into doing some kind of like train trip, not 24 hours long, but some kind of really beautiful scenic trip. There's a beautiful one near Sedona, Arizona, and the Colorado Rockies. It's during the winter time, which is just absolutely gorgeous. They have a whole snow train ride that you can do, and like dinner, lunch, or something like that, which would be very romantic and beautiful. So I think we're thinking about doing that. Definitely would love to do an international trip. Like Scotland and Sweden are still super, super high on my list. Definitely really miss Australia and New Zealand. I mean, like New Zealand, I don't know if anybody's interested in ever going to New Zealand, but if you are, oh my God, all of your wildest expectations will be fulfilled. My older sister had gone there. She showed me pictures, and even in the pictures, I was just drooling and just aching to go there. And I never thought that I was actually going to be able to go to New Zealand because, being paralyzed and looking at the trails and getting in and out of the car and all this stuff. I'm like, there's just no way that I'm gonna have the energy and the physical stamina to do this trip, let alone on my own. Yeah. And here I was 20 years later, had the opportunity, everything just fell in line, and I just, and I went for it. And Amazing. It was absolutely epic. I mean, if you like Lord of the Rings, I mean, I swear to God, when I went to the West Coast and seeing that white mountain, it was just, I mean, like there was like rainbows glowing off of it. Like it was just iridescent. It was like nothing that I'd ever seen before. But literally on that trip, every single day, I didn't even turn my radio on once because the scenery was so beautiful. And I was just talking to myself the whole time, just saying, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. Literally like every turn like that I would make, I would just be freaking out the whole time over the beauty. It was just absolutely incredible. So if anybody's thinking about going to New Zealand, if that's up on your list, definitely recommend it. And the people there were just so incredibly grounded. it's like their male and their female energies were just in balance, like to a T. Like the women could like nurse a baby and then get on a tractor and like mow a lawn, like like 20 minutes later. And like the man, like, could be out in the field and like come in and like make a delicate pasta meal. It's just like their energies were just so balanced. It was just, I had never been to a place actually like that, where overall everybody was just so in harmony in that way. Of course, I'm sure there might be bad apples somewhere, in certain situations, but I didn't meet any of them like whatsoever. Like
weirdly, I was in New Zealand the same time as you were in March last year.
Really?
Yeah,
Shut up.
That was our last trip before we all got locked down as well. Yeah.
Oh my! Wait, where? When and where?
We started in Auckland. We did. Loads of places. I can't remember because we ended up in Australia, and so we flew. We ended up like doing a cruise around New Zealand, and then going to Sydney, Thursday, Melbourne, I think, at the end, and then we flew home from Melbourne. But
I flew home from Melbourne. That's where in Australia. We're that way.
Good question. I don't know. I know that we got there at the end of February because we went for my birthday, because my birthday is 20th of February. So if I look at library and then years.
I literally I think I went like the last week of February to like early March. I came back like March 12th or 14th, literally the day after Trump shut everything down.
We were back, I think, a little bit earlier than that then, because we got shut down about the week after we got back. So let's have a little look. March. Well, there's something. So 2nd of March, where that's where the aquarium was, wherever that was, big aquarium. Which might have been Melbourne or might have been somewhere else.
That's so funny.
I know. So we were there in, okay, so I must have got home on the 4th. We were there on the 3rd of March, and we must have flown back, because on the 4th of March, the next picture I can find, I remember flying home on the big long flight and then having to get on a train the next morning for 5 hours to go and give a talk at the other side of England.
Oh my gosh.
So
oh my gosh. That's too much.
I was like, yeah, I can make it work. So yeah, we probably already left New Zealand and we're over in Australia by then. So yeah, that must have been Melbourne, because and then
we were definitely in New Zealand at the same time.
Yeah,
so
weird,
funny.
isn't it? It is a ridiculously small world. Where can people who are listening find out more about you, your books, your social media presence, all that stuff? Plug everything.
Yeah. So the website is wheelchairtraveling.com. And of course, from there, I'm on all the social media stuff, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. And my book is available on Amazon, ships worldwide, and it's called Confined to a Line. It's blue. It's blue and yellow with a hospital bed on it. And it's gotten some really great reviews. And I feel like it's very refreshing to have somebody express a very honest experience about being in the hospital, and not in a way where you yourself want to kill yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
Because it's so depressing. So it ends good. So yes, it's real, and talk about some real shit, because it was stressful, and I was depressed, some days. But you see the journey of how I kind of got myself out of that, which is very important. And it gives a lot of love to nurses too, which I think, more so this day and age, but always and forever, nurses are such incredible human beings. And if anybody's actually ever been hospitalized and really seen and felt what the nurses actually do every single day, how much they do overtime and what they give from themselves, and how much they have to lift up people and physically do such very difficult things and mentally be sound and all of these things, they just don't get enough credit in my book. And so I really try to give a lot of love to the nurses in the book as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you for being so generous with your time as well, obviously. We've gone for 2 hours. We've done a nice chunky one, and thank you very much.
Can I read one more poem?
Of course.
Okay.
It can be two more if you want.
This is for my new book as well.
Ooh, we're getting exclusives here, people.
Yes, and it kind of parallels a poem that I read earlier in the episode. So this one is called Summer Umbrella. So if you remember earlier in the episode, there was a poem that I read called The Storm. So this is Summer Umbrella. So we've got a little theme going on. Summer Umbrella. When I was 14 on a hot summer day, God gave me an umbrella and I didn't know what to say. There was no use for it, but I thanked him anyway. A few hours later, out of nowhere, it began to pour. Harder and harder it fell until I couldn't see anymore. As lightning roared, I was swept away by its rage, thrown and tossed about in its cage. As suddenly as it started, it stopped, and then I plopped to the ground, completely unaware of the gift I had found. Other storms came and went, but none were quite like this. One day I asked God, what lesson did I miss? And this is what God said. Though rain may come unexpected and knock you from your feet, do not retreat. Keep at it, no matter how steep. I will always be your umbrella, despite what is done, keeping your spirit dry when it's hard to feel the sun.
Amazing.
So don't give up. Don't give up.
No, never.
Yeah. No matter how hard it is, like even if it's hard, like there's so many things to learn, even in all the hard shit. It's just keep going. Like just keep going. There's something beautiful to be learned from this. Like, why else are we here? Like, what else are we gonna do? Like, just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely.